we gotta do this one too. But to be fair, most of these are from the worst list or honorable mentions from the worst list, so this won't take as long as the worst list did. That video was an hour long, so this one won't be nearly as long. It'll be nice and quick, just summarizing pretty much all my thoughts on why these particular ones didn't live up to my personal expectation. So, let's talk about it. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Music Station, your number one station for animation, including TV and movies as well. I'm your host, Jackson Small. Welcome to our second year-end list. Welcome to the top 15 most disappointing movies of 2024. Now, pretty much the word disappointing is how I would describe 2024 in terms of movies. It was a pretty disappointing year. It was a pretty mediocre year with a lot of stinkers and a lot that didn't live up to expectations. So, no honorable mentions for this one as I fixed my little head hoodie combination thing. And I'm currently working on a new cosplay, so I gotta make this quick. So, here we go. This is the top 11 most disappointing movies of 2024. Why top 11? Because I like to go one step beyond, in the words of the Nostalgia Critic. Let's begin. Starting off at number 11 is The Fall Guy, a movie that a lot of people praise to high heaven, and when I finally watched it, I didn't really get it. It's a pretty good movie, it is a solid movie, and it has some pretty funny moments and an amazing final act. But the romance fell flat, the leads had no chemistry, and the beginning of the movie was really, really slow. So, because of that, I just didn't really get what people were overpraising so much about it. Like, it's a cool concept, the actors aren't bad by any means, but it just didn't really pull me in like it did a lot of other people. So, because of that, it's on the most disappointing list, but it's not a bad movie. Let me paraphrase that. Just because a movie's on this list does not automatically mean it's bad. Even though most of these are from the worst list, not all of them from the worst list were actually that bad, so. Yep. Moving on. Like I said, we're going to fly through these quick. Number 10 is Crisis on Infinite Earths. I already pretty much went on and on in the worst list about why it didn't work, but it can be summed up like this. It was supposed to be a big grand finale for the Tomorrowverse era of the DC animated universe, but instead fell on its face and became a over-long, tedious, boring slog. It has some really cool parts in it, like Old Flash's story in Part 1, the return of Terry McGinnis' Batman Beyond in Part 2, and Part 3 with the best scene in this entire movie with Kevin Conroy's final performance as animated series Batman. Outside of that, this thing was a piece of crap, and it really did disappoint me. Especially because if we're talking about just Part 1 by itself was just fine. Part 1 was okay. But in 2 and 3, it just took way too long to get to the point, and the writing took a huge nosedive as it tried to bring all these different things together and then just lost itself in all the confusion. So that's why it's on the list, and that's also why it was very high on the worst list. Number 9 is a movie that was not on the worst list as an honorable mention or as an actual entry, but it's a movie I do want to talk about for a brief moment, and that is In a Violent Nature. I did do an unscripted movie review for this one, but it can basically be summed up like this. It has a really, really cool idea of having a whole horror movie from the killer's perspective. That's actually a really cool idea. And there are some amazing brutal kills in here, like the yoga kill. Oh, I can't even do it justice. You gotta see it for yourself. If you can stomach gore, you gotta check it out for yourself. It's one of the most brutal, gory, sadistic things you will ever see outside of Terrifier. But outside of that, the movie's kind of boring because it's mainly just this big, hulking, monstrous, evil person walking around the woods. And a lot of it is spent on that with most of the time no music, the sounds of nothing but nature, and just a whole lot of a dude walking through the woods. It gets really boring really quick. So, it's not a bad movie. I can definitely see what it was trying to do, and I do give it props for trying to be original, but in this case, it was very much experimental, and it didn't quite pan out. Sorry. But it's still a decent movie, and that's why it's not on the worst list. But it is on this list because it is disappointing. Number 8, I've talked about this one already, so we're going to fly through this one nice and quick. Argyle. The first movie I saw this year, and it was it was one that set a pretty bad precedent going forward. Now, the movie itself technically isn't bad. I didn't give it a bad score. I gave it, I think, a 5 out of 10. But after hearing some people really praise it a lot like The Fall Guy, when I saw it, I was just left confused. Like, what are people seeing? What are people talking about and seeing in this movie that gripped them so much that I just don't? I don't know. It left me frustrated, it left me bored, and it left me just wanting to watch The Lost City again. Because that's pretty much this exact same movie, but way better and actually funny. So, yeah, Argyle, not a fan. Boring movie. Skip it. 7, Furiosa. I've already talked about it at length in the worst list again, but basically it sums up like this. Not a big Mad Max fan. I really enjoyed the first 2 movies. After that, I really couldn't care. But I gave this movie a chance because it has Chris Hemsworth, it has Anya Taylor-Joy, and it's about Furiosa, the best character from Fury Road. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it can still work out despite me not being a huge fan of it. No, it was just a terrible, terrible bore fest. And Anya Taylor-Joy was terrible as Furiosa. Like, I get it's supposed to be a younger version of Furiosa, but you could have gotten someone way better to play the younger version of Furiosa. I did not buy Anya for 1 second in this role. So, yep, not a good role, not a good movie. Chris Hemsworth was the best part. Moving on. 6 is a movie that I actually have not talked about yet up to this point. It's one that I didn't review, and it's one that wasn't on the worst list. And that is a movie that's actually pretty decent called Spaceman. This is a movie from Netflix starring Adam Sandler, and it was supposed to be Adam Sandler's take on a serious sci-fi drama. And I know you're like, wait, Adam Sandler doing a serious movie? Pfft, no way that can work. No, he can do serious roles, he just does them very rarely. But when he does do them, most of the time, they're pretty good. But this movie, unfortunately, his performance was not very memorable. It wasn't terrible by any means, but it didn't feel as enthralling as something like Uncut Gems, for example. That, he was an amazing character in that. But in Spaceman, I don't know, he just becomes like every other generic space astronaut guy with some weird conflict going on in his brain. And that's pretty much it. It has nice cinematography, there are good performances in here, and I give Adam credit for trying to do something different than what he usually does. But it just didn't pan out, and the movie overall was like a one and done at best. It's a decent movie, but man, I expected way more than what I got. Okay, now we can fly through these top 5 all pretty quick because they are all from the worst list, so let's fly through them very fast. 5, Beverly Hills Cop 4 Axel F. Loved the first 3, was super excited for this one, finally watched it, saw super positive reviews on it before I watched it, and then when I finally got to watch it, I was super disappointed and extremely just bored most of the time, honestly. And as I said on the worst list, Axel Foley's daughter is one of the worst characters in cinema in 2024. I freaking hated her so much. So, yep, that's it. Outside of that, decent action. The returning legacy actors are still good, but the story they came back for was not. Sorry. 4, Inside Out 2. I already talked about this one as well, but to sum it up, it's a terrible sequel to an actual good movie that craps all over that good movie. And it reverts Amy Poehler back to the same annoying stereotype that she's always been. That's pretty much it. 3, Ghostbusters 5 Frozen Empire. Not the biggest Ghostbusters fan, but after how much I loved Afterlife, I grew some excitement for Frozen Empire being the big follow-up to it, where it was going to bring together the cast of Afterlife with the original cast together in one movie against a big, new, interesting, unique, and honestly pretty badass ice monster. And most of the time it was spent on some stupid bullcrap about one person not being allowed to be a Ghostbuster because she's underage. Dude, stupid. If you had a problem with that, you should have addressed it in the first movie. And then all the other returning actors from the movie are bad. Every single one of them. The story's bad, the writing is bad, and it's not until like the third act, when everything actually freezes over, that things become somewhat actually interesting. Until then, it's just a mess. It's a big, frozen, stinky mess. 2. Joker Folie à Deux. Not a fan of this one at all. I know that there are some people that like it, and I can understand if maybe you look at it from the perspective of Todd Phillips made this movie entirely out of spite. Because he didn't want to make a sequel, but WB forced him to make one anyway. Regardless, this movie was terrible. Like, every single little bit of it. Harley Quinn, played by Lady Gaga, is absolutely atrocious. Making it a musical was the worst choice you could have possibly made. And so much of the movie just didn't work. So much of it is spent with just Arthur in jail, or him and Harley banging in a jail cell, and a bunch of other dumb, stupid crap. And then you get to the ending, and it's literally a kick in the nuts that makes the original itself obsolete. Like, it makes the original pointless. That's how bad the ending is. So, yeah, nothing more to say. Piece of crap movie. It's on the worst list for a reason. Number 3 on the worst list for a reason. It sucks, it's trash, it's garbage, don't watch it, not worth your time. And finally, number 1, Kung Fu Panda 4. This is the one that was literally so disappointing that I had to put it in the top 10 of the worst list, despite it getting a higher score than a grand majority of the list. Because this movie continues to piss me off. Every single time I'm reminded of it, every single time that I have to remember it, it gets me in my core of anger, because it's like, you have a perfectly solid trilogy. Why would you make a 4th? There's no reason outside of your own stupid greed. Then having Awkwafina as the new Dragon Warrior, terrible. Having this awesome new villain that's only in the final 30 freaking minutes of the movie, terrible. Worst final battle in the franchise, having all the old characters back for the sake of nostalgia bait for less than 10 minutes, stupid. And not to mention, the worst thing about this being a Kung Fu Panda movie, the jokes all suck balls. Every single one of them. None of them are funny. They're all cringy child dialogue. And it's so horrible. Like, yeah, there were some cringy moments in Kung Fu Panda 3, but I could look past it because of the rest of the movie itself being solid. This I cannot, and this it just becomes a huge problem, because so much of it is the most lowbrow, low-hanging fruit, stupid, obnoxious, blatantly dumb, lazy, half-efforted humor that I have ever seen anything DreamWorks related. And yes, this is from the same company that made Boss Baby and Trolls. That's saying something. Then you have the finale, which sucks. Then you have the runtime being way too long, and great animation being wasted on this terrible story that goes nowhere. It's a terrible movie, it's a piece of crap movie, and I hope DreamWorks never touches this franchise again. They ruined it, they killed it. Do not make another one. You do not deserve the IP anymore. And because of that, not to mention being so pissed off by it when I finished watching it initially that I had to make a review the second I got back from the movie theater, yeah, it's the most disappointing movie of the year easily. And that's it. That's all I got for the most disappointing list. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this on every single day. Like I said, this video, super quick, because grand majority of these I already talked about on the worst list, and the rest, I didn't really have a whole lot to say. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you still enjoyed the video regardless. Let me know in the comments what your most disappointing movie experience was of this year. I would love to hear it. And if you have any tips or any suggestions for videos to make in the future, or how to improve my video quality, I'm all ears. And I'll see you guys next time when we dive into the positive side finally, because now that we're done talking about the worst and the most disappointing, we get to go to the next list, the next one that is actually positive. So, yep, we're done talking negatives for now, thankfully. So, I'll see you guys next time for the top 10 most surprising movies of 2024. See you then. Listen, forget. So listen and you won't regret being
a chance, and you won't end up like the fool who ripped his pants.